I don't want anybody to move. I don't want anybody to go out of this altar. I don't want anyone to go anywhere, because I want to tell you, nobody knew. Absolutely no person, not even my wife, knew what I was going to preach this morning. I sent them late yesterday afternoon. I said, I have no notes. I have nothing I want to give you. Something in me stirred, and God said, I want to do something totally different tomorrow. And God dropped this word in my heart. And this is for every one of you that are in this altar, and for every one of you that are standing or in this room right now. I want every man and woman in here to lay your hand on your chest and say, this is my word. I'm going to go through it real quick. This ain't going to take long. Out of the book of Exodus, chapter 14, the children of Israel have left out of Egypt. And God told them, He said, He gave them a specific place. He said, I want you to go and camp there. I want you to go and hide out there. Everybody say, hide out. How many of you have ever been to a place in your life where you've been so hurt you just want to hide out? Come on, am I the only one? How many of you here have ever just wanted to just get in the bed and pull the covers over your head and just say, that's it, I can't deal with it anymore. I've had it, I give up. That's enough. Well, that's where they were. They were tired, they were weary. They had seen the miracle of God delivering them, but now, here they are in the wilderness, in tents. They camped out, and all of a sudden they look, and in the distance, in the far distance, over the edge of the hills, they see a cloud of dust. And all of a sudden it begins to appear a larger cloud of dust. And then they can see the chariots of the army of Pharaoh. He's found them. And here they are, camped out with an ocean in front of them, mountains behind them, and nowhere to go. Am I the only one? Who has ever been in a place in your life where there is nowhere to turn? Come on. Who in here has ever been there where there's no place to go? And now listen to what they said. Down in Exodus chapter 14, it starts in verse 10. It says, as Pharaoh approached, the Israelites looked up, and there were the Egyptians marching after them. They were terrified, and they cried out to the Lord. And they said to Moses, was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us to the desert to die? What have you done to us by bringing us out of Egypt? Didn't we say to you in Egypt, leave us alone? Let us serve the Egyptians. It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the desert. How many of you have ever looked back and said, I'd rather go back to where I was than where I'm at right now? Don't lie. Don't lie. How many of us have ever looked back and said, I would just rather go back to where I was? Come on. Those of you in this altar, that's what the devil has done. He said, why don't you just go back to where you were? Why don't you just turn around and go back? You've been hurt, you've been wounded, you've been rejected, you've lost stuff, you've been through the battle. Why don't you just turn around and go back? But how many of you know there's no going back? Come on, say that. Say, I'm not going back. I've gone too far to turn back now. Listen, Moses answered the people, and he said, hey, don't be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance of the Lord that will be brought to you today. Everybody say today. How many of you are ready to get your deliverance today? No, come on. Say today. Watch this. The Lord will fight for you. You only need to be still. And then in verse 15, the Lord. Woo. Everybody say God. The Lord said to Moses, why are you crying out to me? Tell the Israelites to get up and move on. 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 Listen, you may say to me, preacher, why do I need to move on? Why do I need to get up? Why is that so important? Well, let me tell you why it's so important. When you fail to go forward, the first thing you do is you're going to stop walking by faith and you're going to start living by fear. How many of you refuse to live by fear in this building this morning? No, come on. Come on. Say, fear, I command you to go. Listen, the minute you stop going forward or making progress in your spiritual walk, the next thing you know is you'll find yourself no longer walking in faith, but living in fear. God doesn't want you living in fear any longer. Today, come on, say it, today. Listen, I'm ready to preach. Some of you have been camped out in the place of hurt feelings for so long, it's time to pull up stakes and go forward. Some of you have been camped out in the place of anger for so long, it's time to pull up stakes and go forward. Some of you have been camped out in the place of depression for so long, it's time to get up and move on. Somebody shout, move on. Some of you have been in a place of bitterness for so long, it's time to get up and move on. Some of you have been in the place of laziness or in the city of I don't care for so long, it's time to get up and move on. Some of you have been camped out in the place of easiness or comfort for so long, it's time to get up and move on. Some of you have been camped out in the place of satisfaction for so long, it's time to get up, get up, get up, get up. How many of y'all are ready to get up and move today? Listen. Quit looking at the circumstance and quit looking at the enemy. Lift up your head and look to God. Stop griping. Stop complaining. Stop grumbling and blaming everybody else. Get up and move on. Listen to this. This is your word from God for today. Nothing ever happens while you sit still. Miracles only occur when you are moving. Nothing happens. You say, what do I do? Do something. I said, do something. Do something. Go home and look at your bills, put them all out on the table and go through them and say, well, I can only pay one. Then pay that one and move forward. Some of you got your heart broken and trampled on. You know what? Go dig a hole in the backyard. Bury everything they ever gave you in that hole. Cover it up. Stomp on it. Brush off yourself. Go back in the house and say it's time to move on. Watch this. I had never noticed this until last night, and I'm going to get out of your way. I want you to finish. Don't anybody leave before we take up our offering. Half our church stayed home, and I don't blame them. Did anybody look at the weather today? Listen to me. All of you that are in my and Andrea's small group that shoots guns, it's supposed to rain later. Tell you what we're going to do. Come to the church at 5:30, and we're going to have a fellowship. And if it quits raining, we'll go outside and shoot something. We're in the county. They can't stop us. We're not in the city limits. We may go, won't nobody go to jail but me, I promise. No, we're going to have a fellowship here. Food, fun, fellowship, hang out, love on one another, pray for one another. But watch this. I never saw this until last night. You know, I always thought Moses just went to the Red Sea and lifted up his staff and held it up, and God sent an east wind, and it blew and it parted the Red Sea, and then they walked through on dry ground. That's not the way it happened. I challenge you to go back and read Exodus 14. The enemy got so close to them that it said that God showed up on one side as a pillar of cloud of total darkness. That side was toward the enemy. It was so dark they couldn't see anything. And on the other side, there was the pillar of fire which lit up the camp. God stood between them and the enemy, and then they had a decision to make. If they had not have packed up their tents, got their stuff together, got ready to move, it was only after all night of God protecting them and them by faith. Because now watch this. Let me remind you, everybody say there was nowhere to go. There was an ocean in front and mountains behind and an enemy on their side. There was nowhere to go. So by packing up, that was an act of faith. And when they finished packing up, they got up and said, Moses, we're ready to move on. Where are we going? And God said to Moses, go stand at the edge of the Red Sea and lift up your staff and watch what I'm about to do. How many of you are ready to pick up your camp tonight? No. How many of you are ready to pick up your camp by faith? Come on, somebody. Say, I'm ready to get up and move on. It's my day for my deliverance from the Lord.